Hello, everyone. We are so happy to have you here with us on the Stronger Marriage webinar produced by the Utah Marriage Commission, hosted by Utah State University. I am Naya Phelps, and we're so excited to have you join us today. Today's webinar, we are so excited to be joined by Lacey Bagley. Dr. Lacey Bagley is originally from northern Minnesota and now lives in Provo, Utah. She is the owner of Celebrate Therapy, a mental health clinic serving LGBTQIA+ individuals, couples, polyamorous networks, and families across the lifespan. She is an adjunct professor at Utah Valley University, teaching a section of the practicum course for the master's level students in the Marriage and Family Therapy program. Additionally, she serves as an advisory board member for the Out Foundation and as a board member for the Affirmation LGBTQ Mormons, Families and Friends. Her work as a therapist and an advocate for the LGBTQIA+ centers on empowering folks to dismantle internal and external systems of oppression. If you have any questions, please ask them by entering your questions through the Q&A function. The chat will be turned off, so this is the best place to ask your questions. We will have a 15-minute Q&A at the end of her presentation, so write down your questions and save them for the end. If you have joined us for the CEU credit, make sure you stay on until the end of the presentation. The survey needed for your credit will automatically load onto your screen, and then you will receive an email from the Utah Marriage Commission with your certificate. You may also email the Utah Marriage Commission to receive your survey on this webinar. Once the survey is completed, you will obtain an email with your CEU credit certification. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this presentation do not necessarily reflect the views on the Utah Marriage Commission. We will now turn the time over to Lacey for her presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen. There we go. All right. So today we're going to be talking about LGBTQIA+ marriages and relationships. A little bit more about me. My pronouns are she, her. I'm licensed in the state of Utah to practice as a marriage and family therapist. I received my PhD in 2021 from BYU, and my master's degree was from the University of Southern Mississippi. I always want to talk about that program because it was such a wonderful educational opportunity for me. They did a lot of hands-on clinical training that I think has really shaped me into being the therapist I am. We mentioned some positions before. I've added that I'm a supervisor now for Flourish Therapy. And I also want to continue to spread that resource to as many people as possible. Flourish Therapy does a wonderful job providing mental health services, as well as social work services and psychiatric or medication management services to the queer community in Utah County and Salt Lake County. And far and wide, they're spreading their wings quite far now. And then I also like to mention my privileges, talking about my social location, maybe where some assumptions I have and biases I have come from. So those start with me being cisgender, white, English speaking, mostly able-bodied. I have a high education level and live middle class. I was raised Christian and Mormon, LDS Mormon. So raised Christian in the United States is the majority faith. So that's why I bring it up here. I'm employed and in a heterosexual passing marriage. And so those things inform my perspectives. Today, we're going to be talking about, I've kind of grouped this topic into 4 sections. So we're going to be first setting the intention for the presentation, talking about where you can leave your comments and questions, as well as acknowledging the difference between safe spaces and brave spaces. Next, we're going to talk about the legal, social, and mental health implications for LGBTQIA+ individuals, couples, marriages, and families. In discussing the legal aspect, we're going to talk about the challenges and disparities that this community faces. For social, we're going to look at the social context and local dynamics that they face living in Utah. And then fourth, of course, as a mental health professional, it's really important to me to acknowledge the strategies to help promote mental health and well-being for these communities. Okay, so let's set the intention. This has been an idea that I think I'm starting to see more in presentations and is taken from a lot of different contexts. I've seen this in sex positive spaces and in polyamorous spaces, this idea of building a container so we can know and center ourselves in what we're talking about today and where we're coming from. So the literal container that we have is the Q&A section. If you do have questions or comments, please put them there. For safe space and brave space, I'm going to do a reading in just a moment. So I'll come back to that. Then we have self-care and triggers. So throughout the presentation, there may be parts of the presentation that are triggering to you. This is not something we can always anticipate ourselves. And so I invite you to step away if needed. Please feel free to pause and come back to it. Use any strategies that you have for soothing yourself and taking care of your needs first and foremost. And then some definitions. So when I talk about the LGBTQIA plus community, it's interchangeable with the term queer. And so I'm also going to be acknowledging it as the queer community. And then if at all I mention the word Mormon, what I'm looking at is talking about the broad spectrum of faith organizations within the Restoration Movement. Is not explicit to just one organization or one group, but encompasses the entirety of those groups. Okay, so when we talk about the difference between a brave space and a safe space, I like to share this message put out there by Mickey Scott Bay Jones, who is also known as the Justice Doula. So it says, together we will create brave space because there's no such thing as safe space. We exist in the real world. We all carry scars and we have caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight hard to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. This space will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be, but it will be our brave space together, and we will work on it side by side. So along with that is this invitation to please ask the hard questions during this presentation. I always say this is the space to ask it in rather than when you're working one-on-one with a client or with a family, and see that maybe some bias or implicit or explicit bias is coming up. This is the space to have those conversations. Okay, so let's get into the bulk of the presentation. So next up is legal. So what are we talking about legally with these families? A huge victory was the Obergefell, I always struggle with the word, Obergefell v. Hodges ruling in June of 2015. It was actually a really exciting year for me because I was in Minnesota at the time at my best friend's wedding. She and her wife were getting married, not knowing that the ruling would be final during that month. And so it's been a really meaningful time of my life to celebrate. And for many other same-sex couples. So during that time, the court ruled 5-4 decision that same-sex couples have a constitutional right to marry under the 14th Amendment, which guarantees equal protection and due process. And with that kind of a ruling in the legal world, what that means is that it was never constitutionally right to deny marriage. So a lot of people think the ruling started June 26, 2015, but really that ruling extends far reaches into the past. So when it came to like civil unions, or not civil unions, couples who had been together for a long time, could they get that right to be called a married couple now? I forget what the phrase is. Anyway, but they were at that time, say they had been together for maybe 7 years and it's 8 years was the time where they would be considered a legal union. Those 7 years would have counted, not just the start date of June 26th. So the decision effectively legalized same-sex marriage across the United States, requiring that all states issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples and recognize same-sex marriages performed in other jurisdictions. At the time, they were having a lot of issues with every state having different rulings. And on the East Coast specifically, where there are several states really close together, that was getting pretty tricky. It was a huge milestone for the community in the fight for queer rights and has profound implications for marriage equality in this country. So I feel like it's been really beautiful for me to have couples come in and be able to say, this is my wife or this is my husband, and have them be a same gender couple. Rights they didn't have access to before 2015. Elliot Page shared the following. What I've learned is that love, the beauty of it, the joy of it, and yes, even the pain of it, is the most incredible gift to give and receive as a human being. And we deserve to experience love fully, equally, without shame and without compromise. So looking ahead, we're in a really intense period where many bills are under consideration right now that disparage the rights of the queer community. And so some sections that your clients or you yourself may be facing are things that have to do with religious freedom laws. These include the right to refuse service to queer folks, ultimately undermining anti-discrimination protections. And so we're seeing kind of the butting of these two heads, trying to decide how we want to collaborate and cooperate in these spaces. We've also seen anti-trans legislation coming out across the nation over the last 2 years. It's been heavily putting the rights of trans folks up for debate in the court system, in the court of law. So these topics include things like health care and access to gender affirming care, sports and participation, as well as bathroom access, ultimately creating hostile environments in these spaces where there doesn't need to be hostility. We're also seeing some challenges to marriage equality. So with the Burgerville, we're seeing that it's constantly been under attack since the ruling was given in 2015, rolling back gains for queer couples and families. At this point, we're almost hitting the 10-year anniversary next year, and people have built lives together. So couples have gone on to have children, and it gets pretty complicated to consider if that right was taken away. How would their union be recognized? And then how would their children and their family be recognized? How would the rights that they pass down to their children work? And then if either of them were to get ill, how would they manage that in a healthcare setting? So there's been a lot of push and pull in that area still. Speaking of healthcare, we're seeing some healthcare discrimination, specifically for gender affirming medical care. It's currently in a constant battle, which is negatively impacting queer youth and transgender folks' overall well-being. We're seeing that every time it's shared in the news that transgender, gender affirming medical care battle was lost, we're seeing a decline in mental health and well-being for the populations that I discussed. So especially for queer youth and transgender folks. So we're often seeing that anecdotally, where clients aren't maybe progressing on a linear path or trajectory that we would consider pretty typical or healthy. The work I do often has these trajectories that are highs and lows and highs and lows. It's hard to see clearly that there will be a path ahead and that there is hope in the future. And when folks don't have hope, mental health and well-being take a sharp decline. We're also seeing education restrictions. Things like the Don't Say Gay bills limit visibility and acceptance, which negatively impacts safety. Recently, a lot of the youth that I've been working with have been able to express that they're in these contentious arguments with their parents around going to school or not going to school. What the pandemic provided was a lot of alternatives to school and offering education online in a lot of really cool and unique dynamic ways. And more of my queer and trans youth are taking that opportunity to step into those spaces where they can maybe have their camera off or they don't have to interact with their other peers, where they can control a little bit better the social impact on their life and their level of safety. because oftentimes in their bedrooms, they feel the safest. I wanted to share along with this, Erin in the Morning has been providing up-to-date daily newsletters about the current status of some of the transgender bills that are going under ruling or going under consideration across the nation. And just in 2024, we've already seen 525 bans on gender affirming care, restrictions on bathroom access, prohibitions on participating in sports, and more. So 525 bills under consideration or that have passed, limiting access for transgender folks in our communities to move about the world freely. And that's a high number. If we're thinking about it, we've just passed the halfway mark of the year, right? To me, July is that tipping point where we've worked our way up through the year to get here, and now we kind of work our way back down to the end of the year. And 525 is almost twice as many days as we've experienced already this year. And so that's quite a lot that transgender folks have to face, knowing that the world around them is restricting their access to, again, move about freely with their gender identity. Okay, so let's talk about the social impact as well. So that's just legal impact. So for social impact, oh, I didn't get a chance to change the top. But we're looking at family, religious institutions, and community support. So with family, family is pretty central to Utah. The family unit, family units, extended families, they're kind of a big deal here. Again, just hitting the 4th of July, I don't know about the rest of you folks, but almost everyone I knew was doing some sort of family reunion or some sort of big family party in their backyard where they were doing water fights. Family is pretty central to social life in this area. And so I added in here, families play a critical role in the lives of queer folks in Utah too. It's not just for cisgender straight people. For all of our families, we have a variety of unique identities represented. And the things we think about here then with family are family acceptance and family rejection. Family acceptance positively impacts mental health, and family rejection increases rates of depression, anxiety, and suicidality. Thankfully, we have resources like the Family Acceptance Project. They thankfully have brochures specifically for different social contexts, different faiths and different backgrounds and nationalities and ethnicities and races, so that people can understand how to navigate the social context that they're living in. So for example, they do have one for LDS families, a brochure that you can look up and download for free that lets you know maybe some strategies to navigate having queer folks in your family and how to navigate building those family bonds and those family connections when there are unique identities at play. Similarly, with religious institutions, those are primary in the context of Utah. And I consider, I've kind of put out the umbrella, all faith organizations from the Restoration Movement, because I think that is kind of the broadest spectrum we can get to try to encompass everyone who fits under that label. Of course, we have a variety of other diverse religions and religious institutions and faith organizations, but that being the dominant group in this area. It can create challenges for acceptance. But there is movement on this front. I wanted to add that disclaimer at the bottom to say that more and more we're seeing that the culture of the community is shifting toward acceptance. And I love to see that. I love to hear that, because what that tells me is that what's central to the family is love, is this idea that we get to be together, we get to be connected together. There may be challenges in how we do that and some boundaries that we work on together, but we're doing it together. And I love to see that energy of unity within a family, that we can overcome challenges and we can overcome obstacles together as a team. And then, of course, with community support. So chosen families and advocacy groups provide spaces for acceptance when potentially biological family is no longer an option and or just temporarily not available. Oftentimes, folks will need a safe landing place to just catch their breath, whether that's for the queer individual or for the family members of the queer individuals. And so I wanted to go ahead and share a variety of the resources we have here. This isn't all encompassing, but it is a good variety of the organizations that we have present in Utah. So I'll just start kind of left to right and describe a couple of them if you're not familiar. Love Loud is, I suppose we could call it a movement, but at this point in time, it is an organization that promotes acceptance and community building by way of having a celebratory concert held every year, and now they're doing it in multiple locations for LGBTQIA plus youth and their families. And so where conversations and navigating boundaries may be some of the more difficult heavy lifting that you do, Love Loud is a really beautiful place to just celebrate that you're alive, celebrate your family, celebrate your connections, and do so by watching a lot of LGBTQ artists themselves represented on the stage, and just to celebrate being alive. We also have the Utah Pride Center. The Utah Pride Center, I'm going to link that with Utah Pride because they often put on most of the large Utah Pride events in this area. There are some smaller events throughout the month of June, as well as throughout the year in different cities across the state. But the Utah Pride Center actively works to promote community safety for LGBTQIA plus individuals by providing things like social groups, spaces, safe spaces for youth to connect. They've recently partnered with Flourish Therapy to be able to provide mental health services to the queer community. And I'm just so excited to see that partnership and to see how they'll be able to support each other and then support the community at large. I also want to share the resource lgbtq.ut. This is one of the coolest resources out there. It was designed and created by an individual named Jordan Jackson. And Jordan is just a tech guru, which we always need. We need someone in the community who just knows their stuff. And Jordan created an online registry and directory of all of the resources for LGBTQIA plus folks in this area. Anything from books to podcasts to social groups to mental health resources, anything is on there. And I highly recommend, if you have clients or you yourself are looking for resources, go to lgbtq.ut or lgbtqut.com to see what the list of resources available are. They also like to use that website and web app as an opportunity for promoting events. So if you're looking to promote an event in the queer spaces, that would be a great place to do it. One of my favorite things to talk about is Stonewall Sports. I am someone who has a body that likes to move. I like to be active. I like to be outdoors. I like to be walking, swimming, biking, engaging with my family. And so I love that Stonewall Sports has come together to provide outlets for that with like Rainbow Hikers, as well as Quack, which is an aquatics club. And so we have a lot of cool groups in the area, and Stonewall Sports is really an entity that kind of holds its own events, but then also is a great go-to for finding out maybe your specific sport and who you'd want to engage with. Oftentimes sports teams can really feel like a family and feel like a community. And so it's great that we have them as a resource in this area. And of course, Encircle. Encircle has a big part of my heart because that's where I landed when I first got to Utah. I came to Utah in 2018 to pursue my PhD at BYU in marriage and family therapy. And ironically, one of the buildings that pulled me close was this little blue house on the corner. And at the time, it didn't have the rainbow stairs. So I wasn't quite sure what it was, but I could read the sign Encircle. I was like, that's a message already to encircle people. Feels like a really loving, caring, tender thing to do. I want to know more about that organization. I went on to volunteer as an intern, working with community engagement, and then ultimately being part of Encircle Therapy as a clinician while I was also getting the PhD, working toward my hours for licensure. And so I absolutely love everything Encircle does. Utah Pride, again, is here because it's one of the largest gatherings for LGBTQ folks in the area. We usually have the Pride events, both the parade and the festival. the first weekend in June. And it's the best time. It's the best time to connect with the community, to see how everyone's doing. There's a great drag queen named Patagonia who talks about, she's written a song about how birds call to each other in the morning to let one another know that they survived the night. And I think to me, that's what Utah Pride often becomes, is this beautiful bird song, for one another to say we survived this year and we're so excited to be alive together. And of course, then we also have Equality Utah. Equality Utah, when we're talking about the legal side of things, often is front and center, helping those bill makers and lawmakers understand what they're writing and who they're trying to engage with, and how the bills may impact the community. So they're always there at during the legislative session. They're there every single day, making sure that the voices of the queer community are represented, and checking in with those lawmakers and leaders in our community, political leaders, are aware of the needs of the community. And I'm so grateful for the work they do. I want to leave this quote here at the end of talking about social resources. Is this quote by David Archuleta. This is from his recent song. And the lyrics say, if they don't like the way you're made, then they're not any better. If paradise is pressure, oh, we'll go to hell together. And I leave that here because social support is really about this teamwork, this belonging, sense of belonging. It's one of the pillars of checking in with suicidality. A lot of folks will feel the sense of thwarted belonging, or that they do not belong anywhere. And so this idea of togetherness, that you belong in our family, you belong in this chosen family, you belong in this community in Utah, you're safe here with us, is really beautiful. I see a couple of questions in the chat, and I think I'm supposed to leave them for after, but I'm gonna check in to see if they have to do with legal or social up to this point. Oh, okay. Someone said they tried to access lgbtq.ut and it says it's been disabled. It is not a Facebook group, and it should be just lgbtqut.com. And I can go ahead at the end during our Q&A section. I'll go ahead and check that with you. So thank you for letting us know if it is down. I could go ahead and reach out to Jordan and let him know. And he'll probably let me know that he's doing some sort of cool update. But I'll go ahead and check at the end of this. Okay, so now we're on to mental health, which is the bulk of the expertise that I have, and why many of you are here. So some challenges to mental health and well-being are minority stress. Minority stress. Oh, here, let me go ahead and I've got the chat up and I've got my screens up. So the queer community often experiences chronic stress due to their marginalized status. And we work with people, we know the impact of chronic stress across time. It has a lot of negative impacts on not only mental health, but also physical health. And this stress stems from everyday encounters with prejudice, rejection, and the anticipation of discrimination, leading to higher levels of anxiety and depression. And then oftentimes we would also see then leading to long-term mental health and physical health issues, and overall just general well-being issues. Stigma, when we talk about stigma, this includes negative attitudes and belief about the queer community. This then contributes to feelings of shame and isolation. Internalized stigma, so the externalized stigma, right, is the voices talking to us and sharing messages about our identities or their opinions on our identities. And when we hear those messages enough, we do start to internalize them. And oftentimes internalized stigma then results in lower self-esteem and increased vulnerability to mental health issues. So when we say, and when the statistics show that folks in the queer community are more likely to have mental health issues like anxiety and depression and suicidality, a lot of it stems from this stigma that they face socially, which then becomes internalized stigma. And then we also have discrimination here. So direct experiences of discrimination can be in a variety of settings, like workplaces, healthcare, and even public settings, whether that be in the grocery store, in the library, or in other places that they may be navigating. Discrimination leads to feelings of helplessness, fear, and overall a decrease in satisfaction with their life. This is where we see the symptoms of depression and PTSD show up. So just taken together, minority stress, stigma, and discrimination, things that people face potentially every single day of being alive in their queer bodies. We're seeing higher levels of anxiety, higher levels of depression, lower self-esteem, increased vulnerability to other mental health issues, overall dissatisfaction with life, and symptoms of PTSD. So when anyone is wondering why specialize in working with a community like this, it's because they are more at risk. And it's important to me to take care of my community as well. Okay, so then how can we help promote health and well-being? This is really important to me. A lot of it comes down to maybe access to mental health centers that provide mental health counseling or relationship counseling resources. And I put on here just a broad resource for you is the LGBTQ Affirmative Therapist Guild. This is a group of people who are LGBTQ affirming across the state of Utah, who are mental health practitioners who've come together to receive training every month, CEUs every month for working with this special community, as well as providing community for us as referrals or for promoting our own like groups or events, other resources within the community to help one another. And so if you need just kind of a general landing spot to find other resources, mental health resources, that's where I would start. But on top of that, we've got great resources in the community at large. We have In-Circle Therapy, we have Flourish Therapy, Celebrate Therapy to promote myself, and as well as Progressive Paths, Symmetry Solutions, Queerful Counseling, right? Heart and House. We've got so many great members in our community who are truly providing affirming care to LGBTQIA plus folks, both individuals, couples, polyamorous networks, and then families at large. It is one of the greatest joys of my life to have parents walk in, our whole families walk in and say, we've got some queer identities happening. Can you help? And I say, absolutely, come on in. You're at the right place. Grab a drink of water. Okay, another thing that can promote health and well-being is education. There's a variety of ways to educate yourself and help educate your loved ones. Two, again, that I really want to promote. I've talked about the Family Acceptance Project already, but again, I'll put it here because it is such a beautiful project. As we saw previously in the presentation, family acceptance can be a game changer when it comes to anxiety, depression, and suicidality, and this desire and want to be alive. So I love that we have the Family Acceptance Project. I also want to talk about the Trevor Project. They offer a resource on their website called the Coming Out Handbook. And anyone who's seen me present before knows that I'm going to talk about this until I'm blue in the face because it's one of the coolest little tools out there. It is a free PDF on their website, so you download it, and in it, it'll walk you through questions about gender identity exploration and sexual orientation exploration. Walk you through what those terms mean, as well as provide some really cool visuals that you could use with your family members, with your clients, or they could use with their family members to start to understand maybe what is the identities that they're working with, what are the identities that they're working with. And if you feel like, well, I don't even know how to have this conversation, they even have prompts on there of questions that you can ask in regards to gender identity exploration or sexual orientation exploration. In there, they separate out sexual orientation to include those you feel emotionally attracted to, physically attracted to, and sexually attracted to. So this idea, recognizing that even within the idea of sexual orientation, we're talking about aesthetic attraction, we're talking about romantic attraction, we're talking about emotional attraction. There are so many different facets that go into that, and each one of those could be different on the spectrum. And so it's a really beautiful way to start to open up these conversations, again, with clients or within family units, or within couplehoods. Like, I just think it's a really vulnerable way to connect. And when we increase vulnerability, we increase connection. And lastly, advocacy. So anytimes you're helping your clients access events for the queer community or helping them get connected in with advocacy groups, you're promoting health and well-being. Several that I want to talk about today are Mama Dragons and Dragon Dads. What we've noticed anecdotally across the board in the state of Utah, it seems to be that when parents have youth approach them and the youth are saying like, hey, I think I may be queer in some way and I'm not sure how to talk with you about it, or I don't know what to do. Or they just come out and say, hey, mom and dad, I'm gay, just want to let you know. The parents may feel like they kind of flounder because that's not a world that they come from. That's not a cultural background that they hold. I think it's one of the more unique facts about the queer community is that we're not always born into families that share our cultural heritage and background. Whereas in most other cases that's provided for you, those are similar. This one is quite different. And so moms and dads go, well, where do we go? Or parents in general say, where do I go to get help? And we've seen more and more support come from peers than anywhere else. And so organizations like Mama Dragons and Dragon Dads are there to catch you as a parent when you feel like you're floundering, you don't know what to say, you don't know what questions to ask. You have to process your own emotions around the change of identities as your child has described them to you or is starting to open up to you about them. It's really huge to have that peer support group where you can process grief, you can process joy, you can ask hard questions, you can get referrals to doctors or mental health care practitioners. They've got your back 100%. I also want to put in a plug for some of the folks who are connected to the major religion in the state, those who are connected in with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or other Mormon groups or other groups affiliated with the Restoration Movement, who also meet at the intersection of being LGBTQIA+. So we have groups like Affirmation. Affirmation is a great organization that holds you no matter where you're at with your identities or your relationship with the major religion in the state. So for example, when my relationship with the LDS Church shifted, there was still a place for me at Affirmation. And as my queer identities have shifted, there's continued to be a place for me there. And so I'm really grateful to have a place where I can go and spend time with my peers and connect with people across the world. It's an international organization. So I get to meet people from across the world who are in similar social positions as I am, and we get to support each other and love each other and provide resources for one another. Similar with Lift and Love and the Gather Conference, as well as, I didn't put on here, but North Star would fit under this category too. They offer a lot of peer support to say, hey, we're in this space with you. How can we help you navigate it? Or here's how we've navigated it. Can we walk side by side with you as you navigate this too? And so I'm really grateful for those organizations. And then likewise, we have things like PFLAG, SLC. We also have some different GSAs or gay straight alliances across the state for those who are in high school. For those folks who are in middle school or elementary school, we don't have resources for them at this time. We're still working to navigate that, but at least once you hit high school, there's resources across the state for gay straight alliance organizations within your high school that you can have access to. And where we're seeing some restrictions even at the university level with DEI, we've been able to see the university shift to have those resources be incorporated in with other offices across the university so that the resources still are available. Say, for example, for like first generation students who don't maybe know how to navigate universities, some resources are also being provided there so that those who have minority identities can still receive support. I want to add in here a little bit more, talking about health and well-being, talking a little bit more as far as anecdotally, what I've been able to see is quite remarkable when it comes to the healing journeys of queer people who are able to be in safe places, who are able to have access to mental health care, and who are able to see those people advocate, those leaders in their community advocate for their needs at the legal level. Um, when we put legal, social, and mental health all together, and we're able to work as a united front, we're able to see those that we work with rise to meet standards such as just typical functioning in school and at work and in their day-to-day lives and beyond, to get to the point where they're also advocating themselves. It's one of the truest joys of the responsibility that I hold to be a mental health practitioner within the community, is to see folks at the start of their journey or very beginning stages of their journey, where they may feel overwhelmed, intimidated, unsure of their steps or what steps to make next, where they may have mental health issues that are getting in the way of their overall well-being because of the marginalization and the minority stress that they've faced. To see them walk through that, to access medication that can help regulate their systems, to help them access coping strategies, especially when it comes to physiological arousal, things that they maybe don't have control over, right? We can't always have control over how our bodies are going to respond in certain situations. And so as they grab onto those tools and start to implement those tools, we see their baseline of functioning increase step by step, getting to the point where they're able to hold and maintain friendships, where they're able to leave their home and access those social relationships, where they're able to even maybe travel to different states to meet up with those friends, especially if they're friend groups from online chats or Discord groups. We're able to see them then start to access some of their future-oriented thinking goals, right? To start to say, you know, I have been interested in pursuing education. I think this is what I want to get into. I think I'm ready to take some steps toward that, or toward a career that I'm interested in, or even just toward a job that can help provide an income for me to live independently from my family, right? We're able to see a lot of those strides be made as we sit with, as we continue to walk side by side with this community. We're able to see their growth. We're able to see health benefits, short-term and long-term. We're able to see their overall well-being increase to the point of even feeling happiness on a regular basis instead of dread and existential dread and sadness. We're able to see them access community and joy and come alive themselves. And that is the true joy of the work that we do in providing mental health services for this community, but also in me expressing gratitude to those of you who've been able to participate today and join today, as well as those who will watch the video moving forward, to say thank you for taking time to understand the legal, social, and mental health, both challenges and triumphs that this community faces. It is, there are lots of barriers up, lots of barriers that make it hard for us to navigate the world around us in a way that feels safe, in a way that feels affirming and validating of our experiences. So I'm very grateful that you all are taking the opportunity to seek continued education, increasing your cultural competence and cultural humility in this area. So at this time, I'll go ahead and shift over to, well, go ahead and put my information up here. So go ahead and put any questions you have in the chat in the Q&A. section. And again, just expressing that gratitude and thanks. If you have questions about where you can find me, you can always email me, Lacey@celebrathetherapy.org. And then you can find me on social media. I'm at Dr. Lacey Bagley. You could also follow Celebrate if you're interested. We're at Celebrate Therapy. And then to promote Celebrate a little bit more, there's our website, celebrathetherapy.org. So I'm very grateful. Thank you all for being here today, and thank you for those who watched. I'll go ahead and open up the time for questions and answers. And Anne, I'll start with yours and check in on if I'm able to access lgbtq.ut today or not. Let's go ahead and see. Okay, it is working for me. It's one where you don't put the www in front of it. I'm gonna go ahead and say I answered this. So if you just type in lgbtq.ut.com, and I can go ahead, I wonder if I can put in the chat the link that pulls up for me. Let me go ahead and do that real quick so that you can see what I'm talking about. It's just the coolest resource. So currently on there, just what pulls up initially is, okay, so in the chat, I've put the link that you should be able to click on. But what comes up when you access that is they have just a general browse these resources, and you can browse by crisis resources, location search based on your city, category search, community search based on your community and your unique identities, books and podcasts, and then just a big list of all resources. The other thing they've recently added is the calendar feature. And so if you're helping support someone access social and community resources, oh, there you go, right away, then you can look at the calendar to see what's happening today and then what's coming up in the near future. Okay, it says, thank you, Jenny. The chat is disabled. So I'll try, let me see if I can type the answer. Here we go. So if you look at answered, it should be under Jenny's, should be that link. So you can access the calendar, and then their newest feature, again, I'm such a nerd about this stuff because I get so excited and just so proud of Jordan for making this happen, is the Shop Queer. So not only are you able to access, and this one's still being built out, so there's only a handful on there now, but if you're looking to support queer-owned businesses, they have that now for Salt Lake County, Davis County, those that are online, and then some of their favorites. And again, Shop Queer is brand new, so there's just a couple of things on there. And then if you want to learn more about lgbtq.ut, you can see who they are and about them at the end. So really, really awesome resource that just is kind of like a home base for everyone. Okay, another question. Oh, from Kelsey McFarland. Hi, Kelsey. Kelsey says, I have some clients that were married and are now going through a divorce because one partner is coming out as gay. Do you know of any resources for the partner of someone coming out? Also, hi. Also, hi. So that's where you could also go to like Lift and Love, what we've talked about, or North Star. Those organizations also have peer support groups for the spouses of. And it would also depend on kind of like their orientation or their location, their connection to religious organizations in the state, to see if they'd be comfortable with those groups. But those are kind of the groups that promote spouses of tracks. You can also see that oftentimes at like the Affirmation Conference, which will be in October this year. There'll be a track for family members of. So spouses of and family members of do have a space because their voices are also important. Okay, thank you, Kelsey, for those questions. As far as divorce goes and mediation goes, there are also an awesome number of mediators who can help navigate divorce like this. or lawyers who are able to offer support for folks going through this. I want to just offer the resource of Rob Jepson. Rob used to be my office neighbor over here, and we've had the opportunity to educate one another on how to work within the queer community as an ally. And he has done a wonderful job educating himself and understanding the queer community and the nuance in working with couples where maybe one is now out as gay or now, yeah, coming to understand other unique identities or their transgender identities and having to navigate what do we want to do as a family. And so, yes, there are lawyers who do that, but kind of a step into that would also be accessing mediation. I think you can find, along with Rob's information, I think it's the Utah Bar Association. They should have a list of people who you could reach out to about that too.
All right, if nobody has any more questions, we're gonna go ahead and end this today. Thank you so much, Lacey. That was so good. And thank you to everyone that joined us on this webinar. We're so grateful for your questions and participation. Once again, if you did attend this webinar for a CEU credit, make sure to stay on until the webinar ends for your survey and certificate or email into the UMC email. Which is marriagecommission@usu.edu for your survey. Upon completion, you will get a certificate email back from us. Have a great night, everybody. And just a reminder, when I end this Zoom, everybody is going to be gone. Thank you so much, Lacey.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yep.